Hello. This one might be a long one. So, well, if you don't know, my name is Superb. I have been known online as the person who loves Slappy Squirrel, which honestly, fair enough. I should say, post a lot about that when the Animaniacs fandom was still online, but now it's basically dead. And this is going to be my final nail in my Slappy saga because, frankly, I just wanted to get this out there and share my opinions on Slappy, the Animaniacs reboot, Animaniacs as a whole, and really just I wanted to say my piece about it, and then I will never think about it again. Probably not true, but I'll explain that in a little while. So let's start with my thoughts about the original. I love the original. I think the original is great. Do I watch it anymore? Not really. I watched it a lot when I was into it, but my life happened, and I don't have time to dedicate to a show anymore. I have to think about my college. I have to think about my career, and I have to think about a lot more stuff besides Animaniacs. And so I really did stop watching the show. I think about after season 2 of the reboot, I really stopped watching Animaniacs regularly. I just thought, well, I'm kind of sick of it, in all honesty, which is what happens. You watch a show a lot and you eventually get burnt out of it. Not saying that it's bad, it's just I got burnt out from it. But my analysis of the first show is that the Warner segments, Pinky and the Brain, Slappy, Rita and Runt, Buttons and Mindy, all of those segments, a lot of them have their issues, but they're all great. They all serve their purpose, except maybe Buttons and Mindy. I could go without that. I could also go without the Hip Hippos, but that's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying I don't like them. But when I was watching this, I was around 16 at the time that I started watching Animaniacs, and there was a character that I very much got attached to because that character was someone I can relate to. Someone who is cranky, someone who is snarky, someone who's just sarcastic and just sick of the bullshit. Pardon my language. And that character was Slappy Squirrel. Slappy Squirrel was really the only character I could fully relate to in a certain sense. Obviously, I can relate to Yakko as being the smart aleck, but Slappy seemed to be the person, or the character, I should say, that really spoke to me as someone who is a very cynical person in real life, but can be joyful. I'm not saying that I'm just a bore to be around, but I am a cynical person in real life, and I am very skeptical of a lot of things that a lot of people say. So I relate a lot to Slappy, and a lot of the Slappy segments also were commentaries and meta-analysis of cartoon shenanigans, really. Slappy would just, see what a cartoon was for and like the common cartoon tropes. And I thought that was awesome because it's like Deadpool, but without the Deadpool. it's like Deadpool without being annoying, because while Slappy was, Slappy knew that it was happening, but she wasn't against it. Like Deadpool is trying to subvert all these narratives about being in a comic book or a comic book movie or whatever, but Slappy's like not trying to subvert them. She's just like, yep, this is happening, so let's just have fun with it. And I think that is what makes Slappy unique. I think she's one of the only characters that are meta characters that, even though she understands that she's in a cartoon, she just understands it so much that she just accepts she's in a cartoon, and she's like, yeah, this is how cartoons work, I don't question it. And that's compared to like Deadpool. It's like, oh, yeah, we're in a comic book movie. This is what comic book movies do. It's just a very refreshing form of meta commentary, and I think that's what makes Slappy awesome, and that's why I love her segment so much. But back to my thoughts on the original Animaniacs. I think the original Animaniacs is great for the 90s, and I think that it definitely is one of those peak cartoons that was made. Obviously, it has flaws. Like, I don't think every single segment is really that good, but I think that in terms of a cartoon, I think it's almost perfect as a 90s cartoon. And I know that's not a hot take, like, at all, but I just wanted to say that. So I was watching this when I was 16, and I got really, really into it. And then suddenly I realized, oh, they're going to release an Animaniacs reboot in 2020. Now, when 2020 rolled around, I was actually 16. So basically, when I really got into it, and then they announced a reboot, and I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be great. I hope they bring Slappy back. Lo and behold, that would be the worst mistake I've ever made in my life. But I remember, because 2020 was also COVID, I remember just sitting, doing nothing, and just watching that reboot trailer over and over, hoping for what could come next, what new Slappy adventures could come, and Slappy didn't show up in the trailer. Maybe they're just hiding Slappy, because Slappy's not one of those characters that's super popular, but she's like the third most popular character, so if you're advertising it, you want to advertise your most popular characters. Lo and behold, the date came, and I remember it being a school day, and on Zoom, and I would just completely mute the Zoom and just watch the Animaniacs reboot. Probably shouldn't have done that, but whatever, we all make mistakes. So I just watched that reboot just constantly, as much as I could during that school day, and when those first 4 episodes, man, I was so disappointed. I was waiting for Slappy to come back. And then the 5th episode, Good Warner Hunting, I will always remember that. Slappy shows up as one of the killed characters by the hunter. And then I was like, oh, well, this explains why Slappy is not in there. Because even Yakko makes a remark about that. It's like, gee, it feels like we're carrying this on our shoulders. And I was about to say, oh, this is the part where they're going to bring Slappy back, right? Because, you know, I felt that in the first 4 episodes. And then they do Good Warner Hunting, and they find out Slappy is killed, and then they release and then Chicken Boo releases, and then Slappy gets released. And I always found this really funny, but in Good Warner Hunting, when all the characters are released, guess which character is first in frame? That's right. It's Skippy. No, it really is Skippy. But Slappy and Skippy are the first 2 characters you see when that shot happens. So those writers knew, or whoever did that knew that Slappy was popular, and they didn't bring her back. And they were teasing us that she was going to come back, because that was what the focus was on. It was on Skippy, and it was on Slappy. But after that episode, I was really excited. I was hoping that Slappy segments would come back, but they never did. And then I waited for season 2, and I thought, okay, well, they're going to have 2 seasons. Maybe Slappy comes in the 2nd season. And then Slappy didn't come in the 2nd season. And I was like, okay, well, maybe Slappy will come in the 3rd season, right? And I thought, okay, I'm a fan. I can... online, you know, executives now listen to their fans online, so what if I, like, advertise it online that I want Slappy back? And so I did that during the 1st and 2nd seasons, and lo and behold, season 3 gets announced, and I'm like, okay, maybe Slappy will come back in this one. And then the episode titles got leaked, or whatever what happened, and I saw the words Slappy's Return, and I was so excited for that. I was jumping up and down that was actually a thing. Actually, I think that when I first heard that was on an episode of the Animanicast, where they actually said Slappy's gonna come back in season 3, and I was like, oh my god, yes, please, I'm so excited. And so I waited, but I had my doubts, and so I waited, and then the episode title came back, and it said Slappy's Return, and I was like, oh my goodness, maybe that's in the first episode and they finally have Slappy segments in season 3. I'm so excited. And then Slappy's return came. The last episode, the second to last segment, which it really should have been the last, it happened. And I'm telling you, while that was the most exciting time of my life, or not my life, of that moment, I felt so happy. I stayed up till 4 a.m. watching every single episode, waiting to get to Slappy's return. And I got to it, and I was excited, but then the day after, I was disappointed. Because, you know, while I was amazed that they actually brought Slappy back, I realized, well, that's not why they did it. They didn't bring Slappy back to have more episodes. They brought it to make fun of fans who wanted her back. They brought Slappy back to make fun of people like me who wanted her back. And that made me sad. Now, obviously, the Animaniacs is not, it's bullying the fans of Animaniacs. It's not a foreign concept in the show, like the Please, Please, Please Get a Life Foundation. But something felt a little bit off about that critique of fans. And the reason why is this. Speaking as a Slappy fan, we did not want Slappy back because because we just wanted to see Slappy. Obviously, we love Slappy, and we did want her to come back, but that's not our only reason for wanting her back. We wanted her back because she was an integral part to the original show. She had about 30% screen time on the original show, and we wanted her back because she brought something that the Pinky and the Brain and the Warners don't have. Appeal to older audiences, in my opinion. In my opinion, Slappy appeals to more mature audiences because she understands that she's in a cartoon and cartoon tropes are numerous, and she has a lot of references to older times. And we think that, oh, that would have been great for a reboot because the reboot makes a ton of references to the fact that the Warners and Pinky and the Brain are from the 90s. Why can't Slappy do that? But they didn't. They did it to make fun of us. And as a fan, that feels terrible. Obviously, it's not a funny joke like Please, Please, Please Get a Life Foundation where we're laughing at the fans for being obsessed, which, again, we're not obsessed with Slappy. We want Slappy to return because we want it to be the best product we can. We're not obsessing over every little minor detail about Animaniacs. We want a major character to come back. So having Warner Brothers make fun of us for that, it's a little heartbreaking for someone who's a Slappy fan. And this is my conspiracy theory. I don't want to... this is totally not true, and I really don't think this is true, but one of the characters, I'm not going to say which one, looks a lot like me in real life. If you've heard me say that, or you know what I look like in real life, you can see the resemblance. Same hair color, same height, and yeah, so it's a little strange. And the fact that Slappy lives in Pensacola, Florida, which is the same state that I reside in, it's a little bit of a coinky dink, if you know what I mean. But regardless, I think that having Warner Brothers make fun of us for doing that was really dishonest to the entire Animaniacs show as a whole, because you're basically disrespecting the original vision of the show. And you shouldn't be doing that as a showrunner. You should be trying to respect the vision of the show as much as possible. Like, for example, look at the DuckTales reboot. The DuckTales reboot, from what I've heard, according to fans of the original and fans of the new one, is very faithful. to the original vision of DuckTales. And it was written by people who genuinely enjoyed DuckTales from the 80s or 90s. I don't remember where it's from, but they genuinely enjoyed it. And I can see that as someone who's seen the DuckTales reboot. I see the love that they put into it. But when I watch the Animaniacs reboot, I don't really see the love. I see it as more like, okay, this is what they would do. They're from the 90s. Let's just do it. And it feels, funny enough, corporate and soulless. It just feels like they're baiting out certain aspects of these characters for attention, and they're removing everything that had soul in it, apparently. Now, I'm not saying that this is the fault of the animators, actors, or anything like that. Honestly, I think it's the fault of the executives, that they wanted this to be like that. And I really don't see a good excuse for why. Maybe they had to, this is my theory, maybe they were only given 2 segments that they could bring back for some dumb reason, and they had to pick Warner's and Pinky and the Brain because those are the ones that make the most money. You can sell plushies of the Warner siblings, and you can sell figurines of Pinky and the Brain because they had their popularity, but Slappy didn't have that much popularity back then, so why bring her back now? But my counter to that is that the older you get, the more you start to relate to Slappy. I've seen this happen in fans of the original show. I've seen them, when they get older, they relate more with Slappy, and I think that is true with every single fan. I think the older you get, the more you relate to Slappy, so it makes sense to keep Slappy in the reboot because, well, all the fans of the original are now older, so now they're going to relate more to Slappy. So, honestly, it just disappoints me why they just decided not to have Slappy in the reboot, and I think that was the crucial mistake they made. They've made a ton of other mistakes in that reboot, in my opinion, but I am not going to talk about those. I'm only going to relate to Slappy. So, now, what does this mean in the grand scheme of things? Well, not much, in all honesty. It doesn't mean anything, but I think if they were ever going to do another Animaniacs reboot, like they were going to reboot the show again, let's give it one more try, guys, they would need to bring back Slappy. And I will be saying this as an Animaniacs fan. If they do decide to reboot it, or season 4 comes back, or they decide to do another spin-off show, it needs to be Slappy. Or Slappy needs to be involved. Because, frankly, the way she was treated is absolutely unacceptable in this current era. I really think that we were robbed. We were literally robbed of one of the greatest cartoon comebacks that ever could have happened. So I'm of the opinion that you can reboot Animaniacs again. I wouldn't mind that. But if Slappy is not a part of it, or if Slappy doesn't get like at least the same treatment as Pinky and the Brain did in the original 3-season run of the Animaniacs reboot, then I'm not going to watch it. It's not worth my time to watch something that I've seen already and I know will fail. But if I watch Slappy, I know that, hey, this is something new. It's something new that they're trying. So let's give it a chance. And hopefully, if they do listen, if somebody is listening from Warner Brothers, I highly doubt it, but if someone is listening, consider making a Slappy Squirrel spinoff show. Just consider it. You don't have to do it. I would honestly love to see that. I think that would be one of the best shows ever, to bring back Slappy and Skippy as their own independent cartoon. That would be awesome. They could make fun of so many things, and having Slappy be the rock that ties the old generation to the new generation, Skippy and Slappy having that dynamic, I think that would be one of the greatest cartoon comebacks to have ever lived. So my warning is this. Executives, if you plan to make another Animaniacs reboot, or you're planning to make an Animaniacs spin-off show, don't make it of Pinky and the Brain. Don't make it of the Warners. Make it of Slappy. Add Slappy back to your Animaniacs reboot, and if you're going to make a spin-off show, make it about Slappy. Because, frankly, Slappy is the only one who can stand up against the test of time. I mean, if Sherry Stoner is willing to do it, I think her voice would make more sense the older she gets as Slappy. And obviously, I know that Nate Ruger can't play Skippy anymore. That's pretty obvious. Either age Skippy up or hire a new voice actor. I don't think that would be too hard for Skippy. But that is my warning to those executives. But I want to end on a little bit of a happy note. I want to end on how Slappy has impacted my life. And I want to thank the people who made Slappy, the people who wrote Slappy. I want to thank Tom Ruger, who I had the pleasure of meeting, and hopefully I'll meet him again soon at another con, for coming up with Slappy, with writing all these episodes. I want to thank Sherry Stoner for coming up with this character and writing her and voicing her. And I want to thank everyone on the crew who wrote Slappy, who wrote Skippy, who did everything that they could for Skippy and Slappy, because that is my favorite segment. And Skippy and Slappy have gotten through me through a lot of times. And know this, I have watched so many Slappy segments that now there exists a part of my brain that I call my little Slappy, because it's just the cynical part of my brain. It now speaks in Slappy's voice and just tells me all the bullshit that I am seeing. It's just funny. My BS detector in my brain now sounds like Slappy. Does that sound crazy? Yes, it sounds absolutely crazy. And maybe it is, but it definitely is there. And I love this character, and that character means so much to me that I can't really put it into words. It's affected my life in so many ways, and I just love Slappy. I think she's the best character in the Animaniacs reboot. And my final thoughts are, thank you for making this character and doing everything in your power to bring her back and give her the justice she deserves. Now, with that being said, I'm going to sign off from this channel forever. I knew I said I wasn't going to make any posts, but this is my last post on this channel, honestly. And I want to thank you for sticking by and listening to me rant for, 23 minutes now? You have the attention span. You have a good attention span if you listen to me talk about this for that long. But really, thank you. It means a lot to people who will listen and take my opinions over a cartoon squirrel seriously. But thank you. And now that this is done, I'm going to focus on my real life, my college life, my acting career that I'm trying to start, and everything else. So, that's Superb, signing off.